Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. (325-28). The glories of devotional service. Devahutir Uvacha Kachit Trayuchita Bhaktihi Kidrishi Mama Gochara Yaya Padam Te Nirvanam Anjasan Vasana Vas Anjasan Vash Nava Aham Devahutir Uvacha Kachitrai Uchita Bhaktihi Kidrishi Mama Gochara Yaya Padam Te Nirvanam Anjasan Vaishnava Aham Devahutir Uvacha Kachit Tvayuchita Bhaktihi Kidrishi Mama Gochara Yaya Padam Te Nirvanam Anjasan Vaishnava Yaham. Okay, go ahead. Devahutir Uvacha Kachitray Bhaktihi Kidrishi Mama Gochara Yaya Padam Te Nirvanam Anjasan Vaishnavam Iham. Devahutir Uvacha Kachitray Bhaktihi Kidrishi Mama Gochara Yaya Padam Te Nirvanam Anjasan Vaishnava Iham. Devahutir Uvacha Kachitray Bhaktihi Kidrishi Mama Gochara Yaya Padam Te Nirvanam Anjasan Vaishnava Aham. Devahutir Uvacha. Devahuti said, Kachit, what? Twai, unto you. Uchita, proper. Bhaktihi, devotional service. Idrishi, what kind? Mama, by me. Gochara, fit to be practiced. Yaya, by which. Padam, feet. Te, your. Nirvanam, liberation. Anjasa, immediately. Anvashnavai, shall attain. Aham, I. Translation. And hearing the statement of the Lord, Devahuti inquired, What kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing to help me easily and immediately attain the service of your lotus feet? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that no one is barred from rendering service to the Lord, whether one is a woman or a laborer or merchant, if he or she engages himself or herself in the devotional service of the Lord. He is promoted to the highest perfectional stage and goes back home, back to Godhead. The devotional service most suitable for different types of devotees is determined and fixed by the mercy of the spiritual master. Because it's a short purport, I'm going to go to the next verse. Yo yogo bhagavad bhano nirvanat mangs tvayo dishtitaha kidrisha kati changani yatas tattva vibodhanam. Mystic yoga system, as you have explained, aims at the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is meant for completely ending material existence. Please let me know the nature of that yoga system. How many ways are there by which one can understand in truth that sublime yoga purport? There are different kinds of mystic yoga systems, aiming for different phases of the absolute truth. The Jnana Yoga system aims at the impersonal Brahman effulgence, and the Hatha Yoga system aims at the localized personal aspect, the Paramatma feature of the absolute truth, whereas Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service, which is executed in 9 different ways, headed by hearing and chanting, aims at complete realization of the Supreme Lord. There are different methods of self-realization, but here, Devahuti especially refers to the Bhakti Yoga system, which has already been primarily explained by the Lord. The different parts of the Bhakti Yoga system are hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshiping the Lord in the temple, accepting services, carrying out his orders, making friendship with him, and ultimately surrender to everything for the service of the Lord. The word Nirvanatman is very significant in this verse. Unless one accepts the process of devotional service, one cannot end the continuation of material existence. As far as Jnanis are concerned, they are interested in Jnana Yoga, but even if one elevates oneself, after a great performance of austerity to the Brahman effulgence, there is a chance of falling down again to the material world. Therefore, Jnana Yoga does not actually end material existence. Similarly, regarding the Hatha Yoga system, which aims at the localized aspect of the Lord Paramatma, it has been experienced that many yogis, such as Vishvamitra, fall down. But Bhakti Yoga, at once approaching the Supreme Personality of God, it never comes back to this material world, as is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Yad gatva nadivartante, upon going, one never comes back. Chakva deham purna janma naiti, after giving up this body, he never comes back again. To accept a material body, nirvana does not finish the existence of the soul. The soul is ever existing, therefore nirvana means to end one's material existence, and to end material existence means to go back home, back to Godhead. Paragraph. Sometimes it is asked, how the living entity falls down from the spiritual world to the material world? Here's the answer. Unless one is elevated to the Vaikuntha planet, directly in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is prone to fall down either from the impersonal Brahman realization or from the ecstatic trance of meditation. Another word in the verse, Bhagavat Bana, is very significant. Bana means arrow. The Bhakti Yoga system is just like an arrow aiming up to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhakti Yoga system never urges one towards the impersonal Brahman effulgence or to the point of Paramatma realization. The Bana, or arrow, is so sharp and swift that it goes directly to the Supreme Personality of God, penetrating the regions of impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma. Is there a bathroom on this floor? On the down?
It's not operational.
It's not what? It's not open.
It
Doesn't function. I'm going to go upstairs. Text 28 and 29. So Kapila Dev has finished his dissertation on her first questions, and the answers, the Sadhu Sangha answer has been provided in some detail. And now she's asking for more detail. What kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing to help me? And then there's two adjectives: easily and immediately. It was adjectives or adverbs? Adverbs, yeah. Easily and immediately. Adverbs. Now the word is anjasa, but many other places that the swiftly and anjasa here immediately and easily. So the bhakti process, compared to other processes, it's much easier. And some people kind of look down their nose at that which is easier and say, oh, you bhakti people, you're just weak. So you do something that's for weak people. However, leaving behind the whole of material existence requires strength. Without strength, one cannot carry out bhakti, and we're not so strong. So therefore, we need the yoga process, or the connecting link with the Supreme, to become successful. So she wants to know how to. He's given the sadhu sangha principle and what sadhu is and what you do with sadhus and so forth. Now she's, going in more close examination of how is this done? The principle, and now how is it done? And the next verse, she's calling this a mystic process. The mystic yoga system. Now, mystic yoga is Prabhupada's word-for-word translation. It just says, yogo bhagavat bana, yogo bhagavat bana, bana meaning arrow. It's mystic yoga process is in the word for word, it's in the verse, and it's in the purport. What's the point? Is there a point in identifying the bhakti system as a mystic process? At least in ISKCON, when we hear mystic yoga, we're accustomed to understanding those who are doing the meditation process or the Dhyan yoga process or the Ashtanga yoga process with the aim of gaining mystic siddhis or siddhis, mystic powers. And for some reason, we'll explore a little bit the reason why the bhakti system that he's described, it's very clear that he's describing the bhakti system, not the mystical yoga where one wants mystic siddhis. Why is he calling it the mystic yoga system? One explanation, doesn't say specifically, but one explanation is that Bhagavan, who is the object of the bhakti system, in contrast to Paramatma, who is the object of the Dhyan yoga system, Bhagavan has mystic powers. He has all powers and all mystic powers. This is just to detail a little, not exactly central to the verse and purport, but it's exploring why is he using mystic yoga system. In Jiva Goswami's Bhagavat Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami explains that in order to understand Bhagavan, or the Supreme Person, one must preliminarily accept that he has unlimited and inconceivable potencies. Achintya Shakti. Those Achintya Shaktis that are his are unlimited and inconceivable. That's his mystic power. Now that my little playback device has been replaced by one that works, thanks to Atulya. Just this morning I was listening to a morning walk conversation, Srila Prabhupada in Los Angeles, 1973. There's several persons on the morning walk, but Srila Prabhupada is specifically, as he was doing day after day after day, addressing Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. And, the science and Krishna consciousness topic. And he was exploring how do the scientists explain this and how do they explain that. And he would Bhakti Swarup Damodar would start to explain, Prabhupada would cut him off. He could do that. It was not the normal way that you deal with somebody, but he was instructing his disciple, so makes it okay. Cut him off and said, whatever their explanation is, here's the principle is behind everything, there's an energetic source. The explanation of creation or the explanation of anything. And he was exploring how does poison work? Not just a gram, but so many 10,000th fraction of a gram of cyanide and you're dead. So why? Because there's a potency within the cyanide. Where does cyanide get that potency? Behind everything, there's a person. And there's a person that is the source of all potencies. Then expanding it from the micro to the macro, how did creation come into being? It's a nice philosophical topic, but he didn't get into the cause and effect beyond there is cause and effect. Why does she get nominated? Beyond cause and effect of, the material cause that results in a material effect, and that effect becomes the cause of the next effect. What's the cause of all causes? And so within the cause of all causes, there's unlimited and inconceivable potencies. This is mystic yoga process. So as part of the Bhagavad Dharma or Bhakti Yoga is understanding that Bhagavan has unlimited and inconceivable potencies, which are invested in cyanide and, and anything else that has a characteristic quality. That characteristic quality has an origin. With everything that exists has an origin, except that which is the source of everything has no origin. That which has no origin, the cause of all causes, has unlimited and inconceivable potencies, and therefore the bhakti process is a mystic yoga process. And then one who becomes, further Prabhupada is explaining, one who becomes a bhakta, an unalloyed bhakta, becomes invested with potencies that are inconceivable, that are ordinarily unavailable. And to illustrate what that's point, he's, just a morning walk, but he's making some strong points. And he mentioned the name, I couldn't catch it, the name of some scholar, professor, scientist, researcher that came to meet Prabhupada, and Prabhupada spoke strongly. The position that you're taking, according to Krishna and Bhagavad Gita, is an asura's position. Rather than, descending, you're looking at the ascending, the cause and effect of things, without simply accepting, and then seeking to verify that which is the cause of all causes. And the man said, "You're right. This approach that I'm taking is an asura's approach." And he said, the Prabhupada is saying, the man said, do you remember him saying? Yes, I remember him saying, that Krishna didn't give me the intelligence how to conduct my research experiment in such a way that I could get the result that I was seeking to find. And so, where does intelligence come from? Same place everything comes from. Now, intelligence, according to Bhagavad Gita, comes from Supersoul, and Supersoul is an expansion of Krishna, so ultimately intelligence comes from Krishna. The mystic yoga, back to the topic of the verse and purport, the yoga system that Devahuti is inquiring about is being characterized as a mystic yoga process because it is. And Prabhupada was saying this, when one becomes fixed in bhakti, then according to the Vedic aphorism, one who knows the absolute truth becomes the knower of all things. It doesn't mean that you become omniscient like Supersoul, but everything that you need to know, you know. And Supersoul gives the intelligence how to address people that don't accept there's a source of everything, and the source of everything is possessed of inconceivable potencies. If his statement was strong. When Krishna consciousness movement comes to the point that scientists can accept A and B, behind everything, there's a source, a supreme source. And B, that supreme source is unlimited inconceivable potencies. When that day comes, then this is success. Now, how many scientists are going to acknowledge that? Very few. Hardly any. But some scientists acknowledge that. And he wanted that scientists would acknowledge that. Why did he want that scientists would acknowledge that? There's a reason. Here's the reason. Prabhupada revealed in Toronto, he revealed the reason. Because the greatest obstacle I have found in presenting the science of bhakti is the blind faith that people have in the scientists. Let's say it again. The greatest obstacle in presenting Krishna consciousness in the world is the blind faith that people have in scientists. And if science says yes, then the Vedas are okay because the scientist says yes. If the scientist says no, then people are uncomfortable in accepting what the Vedas say because the scientist doesn't agree. He calls it blind faith. So he was challenging purposefully again and 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 again, and encouraging the Bhaktivedanta Institute to do the same, challenging blind faith. And what if blind faith is being challenged, there have to be explanations. And one can give explanations if Krishna gives intelligence how to give those explanations. It's in the Vedas. But like this research scientist, he didn't have disbelief in Krishna, but he wasn't aligned in a way of trying to reveal Krishna to the world. He was doing what research scientists do. So he had enough piety to acknowledge the approach he was taking was fundamentally flawed, and therefore the results are not going to be there because the approach is fundamentally flawed. Now back to us, or Devahuti. She wants to know how this mystic yoga process, meaning the bhakti yoga process, which he has outlined, is to be performed. Let's take 2 or 3 steps back. The chronology of this event is at the very beginning of Adeya Brahma, meaning it's Satya Yuga, and in Satya Yuga, the process of achieving spiritual perfection is Dhyayato, meditation, Satya Yuga. Now, does meditation mean you just meditate? No. Meditation has a purpose. Yoga has a purpose. We discussed it at the university yesterday. The ultimate purpose of yoga, there's an intermediate purpose, that's controlling the swirlings of the mind. And what happens when you control the swirlings of the mind? It's in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Then you can see who you really are. See it the other way. When the swirlings in the mind, one cannot see who one really is. It's just like in the bottom of a lake, there's an object. And when there's waves and churning of the waves and the churning of the sediment at the bottom of the lake, you can't see that object because things are swirling. And when it becomes very quiet, then you can see at the bottom of the lake. So that object looking at the bottom of the lake metaphor is who we really are. And as you start to understand more about who you really are is connected to the source of who you really are. And then everything else. So the yoga system Patanjali describes is to come to that stage of not only the swirlings of the mind subside, but one becomes absorbed in fixed mindfulness or meditation upon the Supreme, who is the source of me and the source of everything. That's yoga. And then ultimately, it's not just meditation upon Super Soul, but meditation upon Bhagavan. And that's a mystic process. It's not ordinary. Now we can use our ordinary faculties to get there, but you have to know how to get there. You have to know that's what Devahuti is asking. Can you describe how to? What are the various ways? And that which is from the previous verse, that which is going to be most efficient or effective, and quickly provide the result. And then what's the result? Know who you are, know who the Supreme, know our connection with the Supreme, know Bhagavan. That's a mystic yoga process. I mean, one of the ways to describe it. Because he's the source of all mysticism. He's Yogeshwara. And any ability that we may have is just a little speck in comparison to the source that has all mystic power, Yogeshwara. Then in the purport here, I'll just end with this. In the purport, Prabhupada very kindly outlines the different yoga systems. We call it often the yoga ladder, but Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, these four in sequence, and their subdivisions and variations. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. And she wants to hear the Bhakti Yoga process that may draw strength from the prior, that is to say, Karma Yoga strength is a subset of Bhakti, that's Karma Yoga strength. That is detachment from the fruits of work and offering the fruits of work to the Supreme. That's a subset. It's not the essence of Bhakti, but it's a subset of Bhakti. It's included within Bhakti. Like $1 million includes $10. It's a subset. And so forth. He, Kardama Muni, his father, engaged in meditation for a long, long time, and austerities for a long, long time. But there was a purpose behind all of that, and that was bhakti. So let's go back. In the Satya Yuga, the process is meditation, but the purpose, the end result of that meditation is bhakti. It's not just meditation, not bhakti. The end result, the attainment of meditation is to get closer and closer and closer to, on the spiritual platform, engaging in loving service to the Supreme. Bhakti is the end result. Although the method is said to be meditation. It's not just meditation, period. It has its objective or goal or outcome or purpose. Bhakti, because the purpose of any process to achieve perfection, how you achieve perfection? Bhakti. Without bhakti, you're not going to achieve perfection. Without bhakti, then the process of meditation is not going to be effective. Say it again. Without bhakti, the process of meditation is not going to be effective. Something will be there, for sure. But effective, no. To achieve the purpose, the ultimate purpose. That's what she wants to know. Devahuti. So, conclusion. There's a whole series of verses where Devahuti has asked how to overcome excessive material attachment. The answer he gave in 2 words is sadhusanga. And then the whole series of verses he's explained what is sadhusanga. And now she wants to know how to execute that process that sadhus give in such a way that very easily and quickly, these 2 adverbs, easily and quickly, I can come to the stage of attaining service at your lotus feet. Now, she's Kapila Dev's mother. In other words, she's already there. She's in the service of his lotus feet. No problem. So she's acting or speaking as if she's not. What's going on? And it's not like it's a show or a drama where she's just reading her script and she's supposed to say this so he can say that. There's no audience. So what she, like Arjuna, she's being induced to ask as if she's not a pure devotee, to facilitate the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila Dev, to give teachings about the process of bhakti. Same as Arjuna, same as Devahuti. And Vyasadeva is the compiler, so he knows, although he wasn't there and he wasn't sitting in the audience, he knows, because he has this capacity to past, present, and future know things. Trikalagya. So it's for our benefit. In other words, the Supreme Lord is inducing Devahuti to ask questions as if she doesn't know, for the benefit of us, who later can, because we don't know how to know. And even if we know, it's theoretical and it's not realized knowing. So the sound vibration is then presented in the text, and our acharyas comment on that sound vibration from Devahuti and Kardamoni or Kapila Dev, so we can learn about the glories of devotional service. That's the chapter heading, the glories of devotional service. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. Bhagavatam is nice, huh? Yes.
Hare Krishna, March. You said that scientists are the reason why Krishna consciousness can be spread or believed in.
I just said that Prabhupada said.
Yeah.
Prabhupada said the greatest obstacle in propagating Krishna consciousness is the blind faith that people have in science, and it's true. So now, what's your question?
But there are some good scientists,
Oh,
like
I'm not.
Isaac Newton and people like that.
That's not the statement. Not good scientists, bad scientists.
So how do we know which scientists to believe and not?
Well, It depends. If you're, what Prabhupada, here's one of the things that Prabhupada was doing in this morning walk. The scientist is interested in researching something. And then Prabhupada would say, that means he doesn't know. So why not be honest? Some people, some scientists are honest. And I'm researching because I don't know. But it's not like they want to say, I don't know. Many scientists will not want to say, I don't know. I'm in the process of knowing. That's what they want to say. We're discovering things through our research. And it's true they're discovering things through the research. But so the scientist, this is Prabhupada, answer to your question. If the scientist can say, behind everything, the scientist that says these two things, behind everything, there's a source. It's not material combination makes results, and that's all that I am researching. Behind everything, there's a source. And that source has inconceivable mystic powers or spiritual potencies. That's the scientist to listen to. And there are scientists that had that position. Einstein, for example, being one. But not all scientists are inclined. In fact, there's a predisposition. In one of these morning walks, Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj was saying, recently there was a conference in the origin of life, and there was a rule that any of the speakers could not say anything in relation to God. It's a rule. You're not allowed in this conference to bring up that topic. So those are scientists to not hear from. But if they're scientists that in principle accept, and they're in their own way as researchers, etc., they're trying to understand how when you wiggle something over here, it causes that effect, and that effect causes another effect. And there's a chain of cause and effect, and behind the chain of cause and effect, there's original cause. And that original cause. So that's a scientist to listen to. But many scientists do not, in principle, do not want to acknowledge there's a source, nor do they want to acknowledge that there's a soul. Now, some scientists are not denying the existence of a soul. Many scientists do. And ethical scientists, I had a little story without all the detail. Somebody that this is a detail, during the senior year of my high school days, my parents hosted a foreign exchange student from Japan. It was, the American Field Service. It was called AFS. You've heard of it? Okay. So we were the host of someone. And about 12 years later or something, he contacted me saying, I'm coming to New York. Can you take me to see the Statue of Liberty? I said, sure, I've never seen the Statue of Liberty. I'll be glad to take you there. So we're riding in the subway from the temple to the park where you get on a boat to go to the Statue of Liberty. And I asked him, what was your research? What was your research in? He's a scientist. He said, I'm on my third PhD. First PhD was in mathematics. Second PhD was in physics. And third PhD was in biochemistry. And he had just finished his research for third PhD, studying cell divisions of a frog. using math and physics and biochemistry. So just out of curiosity, I said, what if the principle behind the cell divisions of a frog had to do with a soul entering the second cell? I didn't say, from what source, but that's the fundamental principle behind how it happens. And he gave an honest answer, which was nice. He said, as a scientist, I can't even discuss that. He didn't say there isn't a soul. He doesn't say there isn't a cause. He just said it's not within the realm of science, because it's not empiric data that you can measure and evaluate the data. It's just outside of our domain of science. Now, I didn't ask the next question, but just, there's a scientist that's worth hearing from, because they're not predisposed against. Many scientists are predisposed against. Anything else?
So I was hearing that
I was hearing that it's modes of nature that push the body and the mind to act in a certain way. I was thinking that when it comes to self-disciplining or disciplining or creating a structure or a regulation within the house or the classes that I teach, so if things are going disarray, is there even a point in checking a behavior because it's been pushed by modes of nature? Instead
Of course there is.
Because a person who's in that mode of nature will be compelled to act in a certain way.
But let me ask you, is it possible that one's mode of nature can change?
Yes, Maharaj.
By training. Again and again, Prabhupada would make that point about his devotees. They were this mode, that mode, and by training, look at them. Modes can change. That which governs so it doesn't automatically disappear. There's vestiges or residual tendencies that may remain, but those residual tendencies can be superseded by another, by training. So is there a purpose or benefit in training? Yes. Then how it's done is another thing, but your question is not how, your question is in principle. Is there benefit? Yes. Training.
I was also thinking that unless there's a strong devotional practice, the modes of nature
That's it.
may not.
It's the modes of nature is all that's going on. Whatever the mode is, you can shift by various means. One mode can become less prominent, another mode can become more prominent, but the modes still prevail. And most people, that's it. The modes. And you try to, negotiate from that mode to this mode, etc.
So basically, the free will still has a choice to
Of course.
figure out which mode to operate on.
Well,
Then transcend.
even supposing making a choice doesn't always end up in that's where the direction I move in. Meaning, depending upon how strong that free will exercise is versus how strong the pushing of the mode of nature is. There's a little battle going on. Overcoming anger. I may not want to become angry, but I may become angry and just burst out in anger or something. Or lust or greed or pride or something. Free will isn't everything, but behind everything is free will. and conditioning, and that, degrees and intensity of conditioning. Is it possible to train someone who has a bad habit to become free from that bad habit? Yes. Regulation, training, and education. However, it falls short if it stays within the field of the modes of nature. It doesn't come to the platform of transcendence. So one can do both, train and cultivate transcendence. Essentially, that's, the regulations of bhakti are not spiritual, but the regulations of bhakti help one become more susceptible or able to be influenced by the spiritual. Dry leaves burn more quickly than wet leaves. I forgot yesterday. Anything else?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yes.
Pranam, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I have a question which is in combination to the two topics that was just discussed.
Okay.
One with regards to the scientists and one with regards to the motives. So I'm seeing that when we talk of scientists, science around the world, scientists seem to follow a single line of thought,
Which is?
whereas in terms of science, that is not specifying one particular aspect, but when they bring up something, everything goes and gets submitted to a central forum, and then that gets rolled out, and that's what is rolled out to students and everyone globally, right? But when we speak of aspects on a religious front, there comes something called as the sampradaya. Like I belong to the Sri Sampradaya, there's Gaudiya Sampradaya, and we see at some points of time there are differences in thoughts.
It's okay.
And could it be that this is the reason that we have this disparity, that we are not able to propagate it as much as the scientists are able to propagate?
Well, let me restate what I think you're asking. There are different sampradayas. Given different sampradayas is the fact that there are different sampradayas, the reason behind why there's some challenge in propagating the message of this sampradaya or that sampradaya, because there isn't unity in standing behind a certain principle. As the scientists stand behind a principle. And therefore, whatever the field of science is, there's a certain principle they all stand behind. But, back to the discussion with Radha, there's some scientists that are theistic. It's exceptional, but, explicitly theistic. Now, there may be, for example, there may be sometimes scientists that claim to be theistic in name only, and they're not really. Meaning, they don't live their life according to the principles of their teachings of theology. Without giving, for example, so while there's a unity in, let's call it, just keep it simple, and saying atheism, behind everything is not a person, a supreme being. Some persons may give lip service to that, but the way that they conduct their lives and the way that they conduct their research is not resting on that principle. So there's disunity even among scientists. Now, going to the different sampradayas. Being broad-minded sampradaya follower takes a lot of maturity. And sometimes there's not maturity because one isn't mature yet. And therefore, there's a strong affinity for us and them. My group is better than any other group. And my business is to establish my group as the best. And it's not a surprise. It's not at all a surprise. However, maturity, or another way of saying is being broad-minded, is to understand that which is essentially the same. That is, there's one supreme source of everyone and everything, and we agree. And then that's being broad-minded. Now, within that principle, there's diversity, which is just fine, because diversity is just fine. And within this diversity, there may be emphasis that goes like this, or emphasis that goes like that. This principle, that principle. But amongst the sampradayas, there's one supreme. The way to approach the supreme is devotion to the supreme. There's a process of surrender to the supreme. And that's, with the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadharmam Parityajya. And then let's just go to your question and say, even within the Sri Sampradaya, there's division. And a division over a very simple principle. What does property mean? And one group says this, another group says that, and there's a split because they don't agree on property. But they do agree on one thing, or two things, several things. There's a source of everything. The name of the source of that everything is Narayana, and the way to get close to Narayana is to surrender to him. Now, how do you surrender this way? So there's diversity even within a sampradaya, which is okay. So can samenesses be at the center? And so if one can, it's unity and diversity principle. And a broad-minded person can see unity within diversity. And one who's not broad-minded will see only the diversity and emphasize the diversity as opposed to the unity. Now, intelligence is to discern, here's some differences between this and that. That's what IQ tests do. So it's the capacity to discern samenesses and differences. That's IQ test. And so a broad-minded or very intelligent person can see unity in diversity, and one who's not broad-minded can see the diversity, not so much the unity. So my answer to your question is that a reason why it's difficult? There's more difficult to propagate spirituality or disciplic succession's message as opposed to the scientists. The scientists are divided also. Even amongst the theistic-based scientists, what to speak of the broader sector of and then there's varieties of atheism. Those that don't accept there's a supreme, they have this view, that view, the other view. The central point is atheism. There isn't a source behind everything. Rather, everything is the causation and effect. And as a scientist, my life is to discern this effect has this cause. And that means I can wiggle this cause and create this effect. Cause and effect. And it's all material. There isn't a source behind everything. That's unifying principle. But the unifying principle behind theism is also there. And persons may too much focus on the differences. Because there are differences. Undeniable differences. And how important are they? Well, it depends on how invested you are in the differences, as opposed to how invested you are in the unity. And how public you go with, your investment in the differences. The two groups may visit Sri Rangam and be very happy being in Sri Rangam because there's Narayan. But, amongst themselves, we're the best. We have the right understanding of how to approach Narayan. And those other guys, good luck. They're not as fortunate as us. So there may be some snobbiness or, I'm better than you in groupism kind of thing. And that's, it's human. It's a material principle. So I don't think the problem is specifically everyone's not huddled around one sampradaya. My understanding is there's overemphasis on the differences and underemphasis on the unifying principle. The question you're raising, by the way, was a very important effort made by Bhaktisiddhanta to unify the four. And expressing in various ways that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was particularly inclined to unify the four, and gave teachings accordingly that unify the four. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. That clearly explains the need that we have to ultimately look for a day when all four sampradayas unite together.
Well, there's a book written about this topic by Bhaktisiddhanta on this topic. Let's just say a little bit more. When in his Bhaktisiddhanta's headquarters, he established his principal deity, Gandharvika Giridhari, and in the four corners of the temple in which they're worshipped, he had established murtis of the four sampradaya heads. And then he wrote a book about it and, beat the drum and blared the horn about here's the differences. And that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu drew two principles from each of the four sampradayas to establish his Siddhanta. It wasn't just being eclectic or cherry picking. It's just these truths are for everyone, and he embodied and accepted them. So he was appreciating how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can and did bring unity to that diversity, even within the differences of teachings. There's differences of teachings. Okay.
Sure. Maharaj, in the 28th verse, I found very interestingly, in the same verse, bhakti and nirvana are brought together.
Yeah, I wanted to make mention of that. Go ahead.
I mean, the nirvana is what is sort of appearing in the translation as service to your lotus feet, and bhakti is the devotional service. So I thought this is a very interesting.
It's interesting for sure.
Synthesis of the two in Devahuti's question.
Well, the hearing the word nirvana has a generic interpretation of the meaning of nirvana, and it's an impersonal negation of materialism. Period. That's nirvana. Leaving one in the spiritual realm And then there's different conceptions in the spiritual realm, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. However, from the Bhagavatam perspective, Muktir Hitvanyata Rupam Svarupena Vyavastati. The statement is there in the final canto of the Bhagavatam. By definition, mukti is devotional service, or nirvana is devotional service. It's the ultimate stage of liberation, nirvana. Yes, nice. Thank you for bringing that up.
There's one question online
Oh, really?
from Neeraj Gupta Prabhu. It's saying, Hare Krishna Maharaj, how can we be fixed on our free will of service to Guru and Krishna?
How? The how-to question. Anyone that's heard my classes knows my answer to how-to question is same as Devahuti's question, how to, and the answer is sadhu sangha. And then you can unpack sadhu sangha and hold up this strand, that strand, the other strand, and put them together and you get sadhu sangha. So get the association. Free will is of the soul. However, as we discussed a little bit earlier, free will largely is influenced by the modes of nature. In conditioned life, it's influenced entirely in conditioned life entirely by the modes of nature. So how do you fix free will so it's not within the modes of nature, which is the question? It's devotional service that comes about by receiving bhakti from one who is carrying bhakti, and then nurturing the bhakti in association of bhaktas, or bhajana kriya, devotional activity. That's how to. And slowly. So transform the tendency to misuse to the tendency to properly use, because that's who we are. That's the soul. And the misuse can be corrected by good association and practice and detachment. That's yesterday's class. Yesterday evening. Okay, thank you very much, Prabhupada Ki.
Jai. Sharon Pasai Maharaj ki.